Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dan with Pekoe Mortgages. Welcome back to another video, and I hope you like my new backdrop. I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, today it was a big day. It was a big announcement. The Bank of Canada made some announcements with our overnight lending rate, and no surprise, they went up. So this video is for anyone that is looking for a mortgage right now or might be considering switching from a variable into a fixed. I just want to jump into what really happened. So today, the Bank of Canada earlier announced that there was a 50 basis point, that's 0.5% increase to the overnight lending rate. So for anyone that's in a variable rate mortgage right now, what that's going to mean is that your variable rate is increasing by 0.5%. So right now, most banks have a prime of 2.7%. That prime is going to increase in the next day or so to about 3.2%. And essentially, your mortgage payment is going to move up by that amount. But let's actually take this in perspective and see what's going on historically. So I'm going to put up a chart, maybe on this side or this side. So going back to 1992, you can see on the left side of this chart, interest rates were a heck of a lot higher. You can see that the Bank of Canada, the overnight lending rate, pushed interest rates up to 14%. This is back in 1992. And going into the pandemic, if we look on the far right side of this chart, you can also see that interest rates were pretty much flatlined. I mean, we were sitting at the lower boundary of 0.25%. So we jumped up, we're now at 1%. So keep in mind it was 0.2, then we increased it 0.25 last month. There was a 50 basis point increase. So now the overnight lending rate is sitting at 1%. But let's take a look at this. Going back to 1992, that's still a pretty low overnight lending rate. So, you know, we have to kind of compare in totality what we're dealing with today with what we were dealing with 20, 30 years ago. Speaking of 20 or 30 years ago, let's take a look at this next chart that I'm going to bring up. So this is the historical average, 5-year average of fixed and variable rate mortgages. And it dates all the way back to 1975 on the left side of this chart. And what you can see here is back in the 80s, you see that big blip that kind of went right up. That blip refers to that interest rate that a lot of your parents may have gone through, where interest rates were hitting 18% or higher. So that was quite high. Now if we take a look at all the way to the right side of this chart, you can see right after the 2008-2009 financial collapse, things started to just take a dive. I mean, they were on the decline, but you can see it kind of flatlined since 2009, so the last 10, 12 years. But the key takeaway from all of this is that fixed rate mortgages were higher on average than variable rate right through the entire spectrum of that chart. I think the point I'm trying to get across right now is that if we look at it in the totality going back to the 90s, it's not that bad. When we compare fixed and variable, we can see historically variable rate mortgages have outperformed fixed rate. And I want to put this into perspective for you guys as well too. So let's take into consideration an example. Let's say $500,000 of a mortgage. You've got two interest rates, right? So if someone was sitting at prime minus 1% as their interest rate, that would have been prime at 2.7, so that would have been 1.7%. Let's say it's going to move up 50 basis points because we know that already happened today. So now your interest rate's 2.2%. So the question is, do I take a 2.2 variable or do I go to a fixed? And today, the 5-year fixed is pushing 4%. So let's look at a 2.2% and a 4% on a $500,000 mortgage. At 2.2%, that's $1,895 a month. That's what you're paying principal and interest on 2.2% of a variable. Compare that to $2,377 and a 4%, and you can see that there's a premium to locking into a 5-year fix. That premium works out to $482 a month, or over the lifetime, let's say 5 years, you're pushing over $28,000. That's the cost. Now we know that variable rates are going to go up, but assuming they were static, you were looking at almost a $30,000 premium to get into a fixed rate. So two questions here. Are you guys looking to get into a new mortgage? The question is, do you take fixed or variable? And there are pros and cons to both of them. The pro to a variable right now is that relatively it's almost half the cost of a fixed rate. And we have a lot of room before it gets up to where fixed rates are today. Most economists are predicting 1 to 2% increase on that overnight lending rate going into 2023, but it's still historically fairly low. You have the flexibility of only a 3-month penalty if you end up going down that route, and you can take advantage of the lower rate today. So you can actually self-insure. Instead of going ahead and taking that fixed rate, you can take that variable rate and pay it as if you were paying a fixed rate, but the benefit is that that additional money is being put directly on the principal. So imagine $482 instead of going towards your fixed rate mortgage, it's going right on your principal. What is that going to do? So keep that in mind. Now, if you are considering a switch, you want to find out, one, what's your break penalty? So if you're actually having a penalty to break that mortgage, what is that going to cost you? And what's the cost to convert that over to a fixed rate? Is it worth it? And keep in mind that the spread you probably had, if you have a variable rate mortgage, you're probably getting a discount of over 1%. In fact, we've seen 1.5% of a discount to prime. So that's a lot of discount built into a interest rate that's sitting at 3.2% of a prime for most banks, right? So let's say you had 1.5%, you're still sitting at an interest rate of 1.7% if that was 1.5% discount. Anyway, just some food for thought. Really, it wasn't anything earth-shattering or not to be expected. We expected this interest rate increase. What are you guys thinking? Are you going to go fixed? Are you going to go variable? And what are your thoughts and concerns on where things are going with the interest rate? Thanks again for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you around on the next video. Take care.